Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the very first meeting of the Northwest Area Elementary School Boundary Study number 2. We're gathered here tonight in Milford Mill Academy's cafeteria. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being on time. We hope you all availed yourself to the sign-in sheets at the front for our committee members. You found your seats at the table based on the color designation on your name tags. Thank you very much. And welcome to all our observers at our observer tables and to our staff members joining us to support the process. Welcome, everyone. Thank you. Appreciate you being on time amid all the traffic and getting ready to kick off this study. Throughout the evening, feel free to, if you have any questions or need assistance, look to the orange card, folks wearing orange card lanyards. Those are BCPS staff members, and we'll be happy to assist you. A few safety tips. In the event of an emergency, should we need to evacuate, please observe the exit signs around the cafeteria. Our best and closest exits are out the front of the cafeteria here and to the closest end of the corridor here that exits near the sports academic fields. Again, it's important to sign in so that we can check attendance outside to make sure that we have accounted for everyone. So if you haven't signed in, please take a moment to sign in so that we can assure safety and security. This meeting is, all materials from this meeting will be available at the BCPS website at www.bcps.org. At the bottom of that page, there is a link to boundary studies, and there is a link to this Northwest Area Elementary School Boundary Study number 2. We welcome our BCPS-TV team that will be recording these meetings. We'll have folks joining us on YouTube Live. If you are not able to attend these meetings in person, we welcome observers to join us on through YouTube Live. It is very important, however, so that in order to capture your voices for the record of the meeting, committee members, should you have something to say, please raise your hand and we will be around with a microphone. Likewise, staff members, if you have any presentations during the meetings, we'll invite you to come up to the front and use a microphone so that we can capture you on your voices and on video for the meeting so that everyone at home can hear. We also have, should anyone need Spanish interpretation services, Senor Pedro is joining us this evening and he can assist. Anyone that should need those services, welcome, sir, and thank you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Paul Taylor, Director of Strategic Planning. Sir.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. And a special welcome to our observers, the public who participates by observing this meeting. I'm going to read something that's on your table for the observers. This is something that gets read at the board meetings. The Baltimore County Police Department's Homeland Security Unit and Office of School Safety has recommended safety and security protocols for public meetings of the Board of Education of Baltimore County. These protocols have been adapted as follows to apply to this boundary study meeting. The purpose of a boundary study meeting is for the superintendent's volunteer boundary study committee to deliberate and develop a school boundary change recommendation for consideration by the superintendent. Members of the public are invited to be present during boundary study meetings as observers. Observers are members of the public, not designated committee members, participating BCPS employees, or consultants. Observers should remain in the area designated for observers during the meeting. Observers should not interact with committee members nor approach their work areas during the meeting. Comments, outbursts, remarks, or other behaviors that distracts, disrupts, or interferes with the meeting are prohibited. Persons who disrupt or disturb the meeting will be escorted from the meeting. Persons using language threatening or promoting violence against a BCPS employee or property are subject to legal penalties. Public comments are encouraged by utilizing the public comment links on the BCPS Boundary Study web pages. On your table, there is a QR code that you can use. Public information sessions are also available for public input and participating in online surveys and also attending board meetings. Also, the observers have their own maps in the back that they can utilize if they need that for reference. At this time, I'd like to introduce the many offices that provide support to this boundary study. I'll start with my own office, the Office of Strategic Planning. We are the ones that manage the process. Again, my name is Paul Taylor, and I'm the Director of Strategic Planning. Other members of our office are Melissa Appler, the coordinator, and Chris Mercado, specialist. We have other members who couldn't make it here today. At this time, I'd like to introduce the different offices that are going to provide support, and I will name the office, and I know that all of them were able to make it today, but if I name your office and a representative of the office is here, if you could please take 1 minute to introduce yourselves. Communications and community outreach.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Charles Herndon of the Office of Communications. I'm a specialist here. I also have another, thank you. Appreciate it, Chris. I think I've got a large enough voice, I guess, so that I hope everybody can hear me. Again, Charlie Herndon with the Office of Communications. We offer support to strategic planning to make sure that this is an open and very public process. That's very important to this process. We want to make sure that everybody has the right information that gets out, so we're in charge of putting out the media advisories, press releases, and making sure that if we have media here, as quite often we do, involved in these meetings as well, that they'll have a point person to talk with who can explain a little bit about what sometimes can be a pretty complex process that you're going to be engaging in. So that's kind of our role here, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Charlie. Anyone from Government Relations and Constituency Services? Equity and Cultural Proficiency?
Good evening. My name is Dr. Jaquetta Johnson. I'm here from the Department of Equity and Cultural Proficiency. We're here to provide an equity lens to the process. I also would like to introduce my colleague, Keith Lewis, who will be here also to help us as we go through the process.
Thank you. Early childhood?
Good evening. I'm Andrea Darian, Director of Office of Early Childhood, and we're here for everyone's favorite thing, pre-K expansion.
Great. Innovative learning, and I apologize if that's not the right name of your department.
Hi, good evening. My name is Leanne Schubert. I work in the Department of Educational Opportunities and Services. Within that department are magnet programs, so if any questions come up about our elementary magnet programs, I'm happy to help.
Thank you. The Office of Special Education.
Jason Karolkowski, Senior Project Specialist for the Department of Special Education. Here's my colleague, Paula Boykin, who's the coordinator of Birth to 5 for our department. We're mainly here because we helped oversee the regional service delivery models for special education for the schools impacted by the boundary study. And we're here to answer any questions you may have about special education in schools that are impacted.
Thank you. ESOL office, which I think that name may have changed as well. Anyone from that office? Okay. Student Support Services.
Good evening. I'm Trish Mustafer. I'm the Director of Student Support Services. In my oversight, it's everything from who your child's school counselor is to how you get enrolled, as well as mental health services and resources that we allocate to support your children in school, as well as your family too. So if you have any questions, you want to know about what the resources are across our county or with respect to this boundary study, please let me know.
Thank you. The Office of Transportation.
Good evening. My name is Kenny West with the Department of Transportation. I'm joined by my colleague, the Director, Ms. Kim Kerr. We support this boundary process by providing data, mainly. I think the most common questions we're asked are, or look for as you should have, would be students who are in non-transport areas of schools within that 1 mile boundary of an elementary school. And the other look for is to think about traffic roadways. So where it's convenient to drive to when you're looking at the maps. Thank you.
Thank you. The Office of School Safety. Department of Human Resources. And is there any office or department that I missed? My apologies.
Good evening. I am Dr. Nisha Bennett, Executive Director, Elementary Schools, West Zone. In this capacity, I support principals with data, leadership, and instruction. Good evening.
Thank you. Any other offices?
Hi, I'm Susan Hahn with Family and Community Engagement. So I go all around the county and engage with families and support teachers in that work too. And so if you call or we talk about something, I'm probably going to call one of them for you.
Any other offices I might have missed? Okay, great. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Cropper GIS, the facilitator for this meeting.
Thank you, Paul. And again, thank you, committee members, for taking your time to be out here and volunteer for this important process, observers, BCPS staff. We're getting a little late start here, so I apologize if I'm kind of rushing through this presentation. We have a few exercises for you to get through tonight, so I'm definitely kind of speed it up a little bit. If you have any questions outside of this, just feel free to stop by and ask me to elaborate on a few of these things. I myself am James Cooper. I'm here on behalf of Cropper GIS Consulting. I've been working with the company for 6 years. I also have the president of the company, Matthew Cropper, located there in the back. He'll be here assisting with the meetings as well. We specialize in K-12 school planning. It's our business, it's our passion. Developing redistricting plans is our specialty. We also provide a lot of other services, but this is what we do. We're honored to be working with BCPS. Again, we have worked with them doing boundary studies in the past, and are excited to kick off this boundary study here tonight. So just looking at tonight is our introductions here, which we've kicked off here with Paul, Chris, and myself. We're going to review the process and the timeline to get you well acquainted on what to look forward through over the next 2 to 3 to 4 months here. Get you acquainted on the background report, some of the appendices and an important data to know what to look to as you kind of get acquainted on what some of the important sections of that background report. We have a considerations exercises, which are some of the rules to follow as you get to evaluating options and consider moving boundaries. And then we have some draft options, some sample options for you to kind of get your brains churning on what it may look like as you move boundaries. And looking at the planning blocks, which are good tools as you look at moving different communities from one attendance area to another. And then we're looking to get you out of here by 8 o'clock at the latest. So by the end of tonight, we want to familiar yourself with the process, the timeline, some of the accessibility, some of the tools, how you can come and access some of the data, and how to interpret some of the maps that you'll see at every meeting. Get you well acquainted on the background report so that we're all working under one consensus and one same message as a committee. And understanding these maps, because they will be a consistent tool that we use at every single meeting. And then we want to start establishing and beginning practicing norms for you as a committee. Typically meeting ones, not as vocal with one another, but as you'll see, these meetings come and go very fast, and you guys will start collaborating a lot more and being a lot more vocal, especially as it comes to your community. And then we're going to review some draft sample options so you can get an idea of what it may look like moving a boundary and getting a little bit of feedback on what moving some different communities, so we can start to see some of your ideas on some of your visions on how you think we can balance out some of the enrollment in this area. So the boundary change study process is guided by district policy and Rule 1280. It's facilitated by the independent consultant, us, Cropper GIS Consulting, driven by a community committee made up of principals, teachers, and parents from all the schools that are participating in this boundary study. And we're going to take an objective examination of data and creation of options, and we're going to collaborate and deliberate with the engagement of the greater community, involving the general public and getting their opinion as well, in order to recommend an option to the board for their approval. So looking at the committee as a whole, we are missing a few members. When I was looking at the sign-in sheet, so there are some members from some communities that aren't represented. So we definitely encourage you to be here at all the meetings so that your community is always represented. But in total, there are 41 members. So this is a rather large committee group. There are 10 principals. You are non-voting, but you do take a unique role in this process. As you are leaders at your schools, we expect you to kind of be leaders in this process, especially when you work in your small groups, kind of ensuring that everybody within your small groups have a chance to voice their opinions and their ideas, and that their ideas on options are actually developed. There also are 10 teachers and staff representatives from each school, and then 20 parents and 2 from each school as well. And then 1 area educational advisory council chair. Participation at board meetings is not required at all, but it's definitely encouraged at the upcoming board public hearings and at the board recommendation meeting. It is encouraged if you do participate in that, but it's not required. And at the end of this process, the recommendation that you as a committee does vote on will be presented to the Board of Education on behalf by the Chief of Schools. So looking at the timeline here, September 11, 2024 is our first meeting, kicking it off. And we have 5 subsequent meetings total that are scheduled here. And tonight is just an introduction to get you guys well acquainted and get you guys understanding what it looks like to look at the data and how drawing up a boundary map and how that relates to some of the data and how it impacts when you move certain communities from one attendance area to another. And then we have 3 more meetings following up, and a very important date coming up is November 6th of 2024, and that is the first public information session. Before that meeting, on our 4th meeting, the committee meeting on October 23rd, 2024, at that meeting, you as a committee will hone in on a few options that you want to bring forth to that public information session that you're really considering bringing forth to the board. And at the public information session on November 6th of 2024, the general public will have an opportunity to speak with you as a committee to understand how you developed these options and what came behind them. There will be a gallery walk, and the general public will also have an opportunity to participate in the survey surrounding these options. And then you as a committee will be able to take in that information from that survey at your meeting 5, which is scheduled on December 4th. To get a good consensus on how the general public feels about the options that you feel very strong about at that time. At meeting 5, if you as a committee have a good consensus on the option that you want to recommend to the board, at that time you guys will vote. But if there is not a consensus at that given time, there is a meeting 6 that is scheduled if needed on December 18th. Following that, once you guys vote on an option to recommend to the board, your work is done. There will be a Board of Education recommendation presented to the board on February 11th of 2025. And that will be at 6:30 p.m. on Greenwood, Building E. Following that, there will be a Board of Education public hearing on February 26, 2025, where the general public will have an opportunity to come voice their opinion on the recommendation to the board. And then the board will make a decision on Tuesday, March 11th of 2025 on if they want to approve your recommendation. They then have the ability to approve it. They can alter it. But at that time, the decision is in their hands. So just looking at the community engagement, as Chris outlined, there is a boundary study website that is at bcps.org. A link can be found under boundary studies. All the data from every meeting can be found there. So at the end of the meeting, if you need to go back and come look at the data, you're able to go and look at that information online. There are PDFs of all the statistics and the maps on there as well. There's an online comment form to go and submit any feedback throughout the entire process of this boundary study. Again, the general public has the ability to observe these meetings in person or virtually. And again, we definitely encourage you to mark calendars of weeks where you actually have the opportunity to come speak with the committee members via a gallery walk around the options that they are considering and participate in that online survey that will be live from November 6th to November 24th. And then attend the Board of Education public hearing on February 26th of 2025. and accessibility of all these materials. So translation of all these materials is available upon request. All these meetings are video recorded and they are converted on YouTube. So if you can't view them live stream, you can check back on BCPS live stream on your YouTube channel to be able to watch it back. And then also that can be translated to other languages via closed captioning as well. All materials can also be translated into other languages as well, and including the online survey that will be going live at the public information session. Also be mindful that all these committee meetings are going to be held here, so we definitely encourage you as committee members to not try to have any meetings outside of the scheduled ones. This is a very transparent process, and this just ensures that that process is always equitable for all the general public and your fellow committee members as well. And be mindful of your timeline. If there's a school closing due to weather or a school closing due to an event, and there's a meeting on that day, that meeting will also be canceled as well. So a quick recap about the Northwest area. What's the rationale behind it? Capacity relief is one of the driving factors. There is an anticipated completion of 4 elementary capital projects in the Northwest area by 2026. And these capital projects will help provide capacity for elementary schools in the area. Last fall, there was a Northwest area boundary study that was completed for elementary schools. Bedford Elementary School is one of those schools that was included in that area, in that boundary study, and that capital project was completed and it's now opened here in fall of 2024. Summit Park was also a part of that boundary study in fall of 2023, and that completed and is now open in fall of 2024 as well. In this boundary study, you hear Deer Park Elementary is anticipated to be completed in September 2025 to add additional capacity. And then also Scotch Branch Elementary School has an anticipated completion of September of 2026 to add additional capacity to relieve overcrowding schools in this area. Another driving factor of why we are conducting a boundary study for this area is by fall 2026, we are looking to facilitate the return of Canfield Early Learning Center students to their home schools or regional programs nearby. And also we are looking to expand childhood programs as required by the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. So all this, the elementary schools within this boundary study area are looking to expand the amount of 3- and 4-year-old programs at their schools. So this boundary study is being completed in the fall of 2024, and the 2 project schools that are increasing their capacity are Deer Park Elementary and Scotch Branch Elementary. And then there are 8 other participating schools, Church Lane, Hernwood Elementary, Lyons Mill Elementary, Newtown Elementary, Randallstown Elementary, Winan Elementary, Woodholm Elementary, and then also Canfield is returning its preschool and pre-K students back to their home school as well, impacted in this boundary study. So the driving factor in this boundary study objective is a community-based comprehensive boundary study is tasked with meeting the following key objectives: provide capacity relief to the Northwest elementary schools, return all early childhood 3- and 4-year-old programs at Canfield to their home schools, as well as expand the early childhood program per the Blueprint for Maryland's Future at the schools participating in this boundary study. So in order to conduct this boundary study process, the district has outlined a set of considerations by district policy rule 1280, and these are just the rules to follow. So when you look at evaluating and moving a particular community from one school zone to another, you just want to see, does that move align by these primary or secondary considerations? As you would move a particular area, ideally you would want that move to touch all of these considerations equally. In the same fashion. If you focus all on one consideration, sometimes you may deviate from the others. So a perfect plan is one that kind of balances with all these considerations as a whole. So looking at the primary considerations, you have efficient use of capacity in affected schools. So that's trying to get all the schools to be balanced so there's this equitable learning environment at all facilities. So ideally, you would want all schools to be around the same district area average when it comes to utilization. You also want to look at the primary consideration of maintaining or increasing the diversity among the schools to reflect the diversity among the region and the school system. So it's looking at the demographics of the schools and are they all equitable in the same fashion of the study area, or is there a great imbalance at one school compared to another? Some of the secondary considerations are maintaining the continuity of the neighborhood, so trying not to split a residential road area or splitting down the middle of a subdivision. Looking at the impact of transportation and pedestrian patterns on students, so trying to prevent students from having to cross major roads or impacting or moving students that may live in a walk zone and now putting them on a bus to a school that's much further away. Minimizing the number of times any individual students are reassigned. So just kind of being mindful of if there were any recent boundary studies and if there were any communities that were impacted. Looking at long-term enrollment and capacity trends and future capital plans. So are there any capital improvement plans for any of the facilities in the area to try to be proactive about that? Looking at the location of feeder school boundaries and continuity of feeder patterns. So looking at does the progression of school students from elementary to middle school, does the elementary school feed 100% into a middle school, or does it split into two? And if it does split into two, is it balanced? 50-50 is ideal. If it feeds 90% into middle school A and 10% into middle school B, that's kind of not ideal because you want students to kind of migrate to middle school with their friends, their peers, friendly faces. Some additional considerations are use of geographic features such as railroads, creeks, and major highways. So just looking at the enrollment and utilization, for this study we'll be using end of year enrollment from 2020, 23 to 24. This is based off of the enrollment as of June 2024. So this table here is going to be a common table that you'll see as we start to work through options. You have it there in your binder as well if you want to take a closer look. You'll have a column that shows you the school, and you'll have the column that shows you the state-rated capacity. Capacity just shows you how many seats that facility can hold. This does not include any portables that may be on that facility. It's only the brick and mortar of that building. It shows you the K through 5th grade enrollment. So we're looking at the amount of K through 5th graders that may be enrolled at that school. And then the early childhood movement and expansion, because we're looking at bringing preschoolers back from Cantfield to their home school while also expanding the amount of seats that are going to be at each facility. So when you're looking at the enrollment and when we start looking at options, we're always going to be preserving these seats at each of one of these facilities so that the preschool and pre-K programs will always have rooms preserved. So as we look at moving boundaries, we make sure that those programs will always have seats at each facility. So the preschool through pre-K post-enrollment, this table just shows you what the enrollment would be if all the boundaries stayed the same, the capital improvement capacity were completed at Deer Park and Scotts Branch. And this is what the enrollment result would look like. And as you can see, there is a great imbalance. Deer Park increases the capacity up to 710, and it results in them having a 60% utilization. That column, that plus minus column, shows you how many seats over capacity or under capacity it is. So if you see a minus negative number there, that means that's how many seats under capacity that they are. You get that number by taking the post-enrollment and subtracting it from the adjusted state-rated capacity. So Deer Park, for example, is 281 seats under capacity. So they have 281 seats available to kind of relieve overcrowding from some of these surrounding schools, such as Newtown Elementary, which are, on the contrary, are 178 students over capacity. Utilization-wise, they are 127% utilized. Compared to the district average, there at the bottom, which is 99%, it's evident that Newtown could use some relief given the current boundaries and with the expansion of the preschool pre-K movement that's going on in this boundary study area. Oh man. We're good. So just looking at the background report, it's developed to help expand the knowledge of each committee member and the general public. It's to help committee members share a message that is consistent and accurate. Feel free to go through some of those sections to help you get acquainted. If you ever need a reminder on some of the objectives, the primary considerations, they're outlined in a much more descriptive format in the background report. Some of the important areas to look for are the boundary study considerations on page 2. If you ever need a reminder on the timeline, that's on page 6. And some of the supplemental data, like that table that I just showed you, is on page 11. And some of the live attend enrollment, so looking at how many students live within their zone and attend their home zone school, you can find some of that information on page 25. So these are some of the mapping conventions. You'll see maps are a big part of this. GIS stands for Geographic Information System, so maps are a great tool to use as we look at moving boundaries. School attendance areas are geographic in nature, so it makes it very efficient to kind of evaluate these things. Every map has a legend that's color coded, so you can kind of see. Take, for example, purple is Deer Park's elementary boundary, so when you're looking at a map, you can clearly see where Deer Park's boundary extends to. There's a scale bar to kind of understand how the distance-wise in miles, and then also a north arrow to kind of orient you on where you are within the boundary study area. Page 14 through 24 outline the Live Attend maps as it relates to planning blocks. Planning blocks are like the building blocks and make it a really efficient tool when you look at moving boundaries. They highlight, there are unique numbers that highlight how many students live within that given area. So when you consider moving that area from one zone to another, you know exactly how many students you're moving. These planning blocks all have unique numbers. So take, for example, this snippet here is showing you planning blocks primarily in Randallstown, and that planning block 607 is showing you that there's no other planning block that's 607. So it's a good identifier tool saying, hey, I think we should look at planning block 607 and move it this way. That number underneath the 607 shows you the amount of live-in attending students that will be impacted if that move occurs. There may be students that live in that planning block but attend another school. Those students are preserved. So we make sure that we always preserve only that we're only impacting students that live and attend in that planning block, so that any students that may live in a planning block but attend an outside zone, maybe due to program enrollment or special teacher enrollment, those students are always preserved at their schools as well. This is the Live Attend tables I'm talking about, so you can get a good idea of the total enrolled. The green numbers show you how many live in attendance students are. That top row shows you how many students total live within every zone. And then the far right column shows you how many students live out of that zone but attend that school. And the bottom row shows you how many students live in that zone but attend the school outside of it. Some of the effective collaboration and some of the norms and expectations that we hope you can hold, and you've honestly been a great district to work with in the past when it comes to this stuff, is always being inclusive, allowing every group member adequate time to speak and space to voice ideas, opinions, and concern. Yeah, we all come from different communities, but you definitely want to give everybody enough time to voice their opinions and give them adequate time to propose a change because we understand that it impacts certain individuals more than others. You want to be mindful of always the boundary study considerations. So we get it. We get it that you also represent your community, but you always have to take an objective approach about what's going to be best for students for the entire study area, and not just your neighborhood or just your school. And does it align with those boundary study considerations that we outline? And then also be mindful that sometimes you just have two ideas that are on opposite ends of the spectrum, and there is no real solution. So and that happens sometimes, and it is okay. So at this time, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Johnson. She is going to, Dr. Lewis, sorry. Mr. Lewis. I'm not quite there. My apologies. And he's going to dive you into a consideration exercise.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to go over briefly some things that I hope that we all are able to complete within the next 10 to 15 minutes. We're going to do what is called a consideration exercise. And basically, the exercise is designed so that you can look at the criteria for decision making when it comes to this particular boundary study. What we want you to do is really interpret the considerations and any input on the importance of each consideration. So you all have, I believe in your books, pages 15 and 16, they show you the primary and secondary considerations. What I'm gonna ask you to do at this point is to go ahead and in your tables or at your tables, take about 5 minutes to talk to each other in reference to those considerations. Talk about why you may prefer one over the other. Make sure that you introduce yourselves to each other because again, you're gonna be with these people for quite some time, so you want to make sure you know who you're talking to for a while. So again, introduce yourselves, make sure that you talk about those considerations. It's going to take us about 5 minutes, and then I'm going to come back with the second part of this exercise. Thank you. All right. If you would, please thank the folks at your table, because those are your partners and your committee members, so please make sure that you thank them for their time. And now we're going to move into the second part of this activity. You received 4 dots. Each of those dots you're now going to be able to use. You had a discussion now about the considerations. You had some folks kind of give you their interpretation of why they picked certain ones. And now we're going to go ahead and get an overall view of of the considerations and which ones really are important to us. So what I'm going to ask you to do is that you have 4 dots. You will use only 1 dot per consideration. So you see all the ones that are listed here. You can only place your dots in one of these places. So you can put, I'm sorry, let me make that a little bit more clear. You got 4, you can only put 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here. Now, only 1 dot per consideration. We hope that you use all 4. We prefer that you use all 4, but if you don't, that's fine. When we're done, we're going to look at some trends and see exactly what is being told to us about what considerations really are important when it comes to this study. So right now, I'm going to ask you again to look at your considerations. You got 4 dots. You're going to go over to this board. Not in your book. For those that may have put them inside of the book, perhaps we can find some more dots. But you're going to put them on the board, and then we'll hold our discussion. Is there any question before we go ahead and get started?
Everyone should have dots. So you're just going to place your dots. So
Right.
If you did it on your paper, that was just practice. So you just come up, put it up on here.
And only 1 dot per consideration. Okay, each person you have, or everybody, you have 5 minutes to go ahead and place your dots. Be mindful of all the folks that are in front of you. 5 minutes. Go ahead and begin.
All right, if we can have everyone's attention. Take a moment. The scores have been tallied. Give you a moment to process what you're looking at. Can everyone see that? So where's my friends at transportation? Although it's under the secondary consideration, the highest tally is the impact of transportation and pedestrian patterns on students with 23. My friends at transportation. The second most important by dots under primary consideration would be efficient use of capacity in effective schools with 21 dots. Then we have a tie under primary considerations, and these are very close in itself. Maintaining or increasing the diversity among students to reflect the diversity of the region and the system of the school with 20, and under secondary consideration, minimizing the number of times any individual student is assigned to another school at 20. Next, we have maintaining the continuity of neighborhoods at 19, followed by long-term enrollment, capacity trends, and future capital plannings at 13. And number 8, the last would be location of feeder school boundaries and continuity of feeder patterns. Any thoughts, anything coming up for anyone as you see the ranking of primary and secondary considerations? What we would just like to offer as we begin going deeper in the process, keep these in mind. Think about almost like as your compass, like when you get in those moments, like, well, what do we say as a group seems to be our primary consideration, and then our secondary consideration. So this is like that guide that keeps me going back, because sometimes we get in a moment we go like, oh, but remember, primary and secondary considerations, all right? Thank you very, oh, yes, absolutely.
Hi, my name is Averina Cropper. I just want to understand the differences between, or how the primary considerations and secondary considerations were determined. Are these determined by what the first boundary study established or kind of identified? Because if we are basing the response of those individuals in this room, it would seem to me that those considerations have now shifted and changed. So I'm trying to understand how the primary considerations in which we voted on, how they were determined.
The considerations that that you see here that we're working with are the considerations that have actually been established by the school board. Rule 1280 is one of the rules within their policy handbook that identifies process for school boundary change studies, and these are the ones. This is how they have identified the criteria or considerations when boundary change studies are to be undertaken in this district. So this is the same set of considerations that we've been using and the district has been using for quite some time, for several years. Yes, ma'am. And they are also aligned with best practices and considerations that we see in other school districts across the country as well.
So I'm Michelle Spinner. I'm a parent. So as far as like Deer Park getting so were these the same schools as the last boundary? Because like, how did we come up with Deer Park getting a whole new school versus Newtown, or like how did that come about to where now we're focused on the other schools? Like, how did they come up first to get changed?
That's actually a good question. I've been asked that a couple of times. We had 4 capital projects in the Northwest area that were going to increase seats for the region. But we had, I think, 13 schools total that could benefit from those extra seats. We decided that one big boundary process was too much. So because of the location of the different schools, we split it into 2. Scotts Branch is the only school that is in both boundary processes, Study 1 and Study 2. And interestingly, in Study 1, the committee decided not to make any changes to Scotts Branch boundaries. So Boundary 2 is this Study 2, the one that we're doing starting today, is going to affect schools that have no impact on the other schools that we did in Study 1. Did I answer your question? Okay.
Do you have any more questions? That was a good exercise, and kind of to piggyback off of your question, Ms. Cropper. You as a committee definitely can value these considerations in your own fashion as much. It obviously shows that you have put a president on transportation, but all these dots are kind of within a 4 to 5 dot range, which to me shows that it's a good balance. With the exception of location of feeder school boundaries, most of the dots are within that 4 to 5 range. So it shows that you as a committee value all of the considerations almost in the same fashion. So as you evaluate these boundaries, it shows that maybe when you consider moving an area to kind of say, how does it impact all of these considerations, let alone just the primary or just one of the secondaries and things. So, another question?
Can you define capital project, please?
A capital project is it could be, in this case, it's a replacement school. We build a brand new school to replace the existing school that's there. And those capital projects were funded by the state and the county because we had schools that were over capacity, overcrowded. So the new school that we built was much bigger. Oh, and just so you know, the 4, in case it wasn't clear, the 4 schools I mentioned was Summit Park, Bedford, Deer Park, and Scotts Branch. Those are the 4 schools.
Alrighty. Okay, now we're going to dive into a review of the draft options. Pretty good on time here, so I'm going to breeze through here a little quick. We do have 2 draft options in front of you. They are labeled with planning blocks. You also have 8.5 by 11 maps as well. And these option maps will also be available on our interactive web map that you can visit it at www.croppermap.com/BCPS NWESBS 2024. You can visit that on any desktop, tablet, your mobile device. It's a good, efficient tool. You can type in your address, and you'll be able to also see your the options on there as well as the planning blocks. As you zoom in, you'll be able to see a lot more detail, parcels and things of that nature, walk zones and things. It's a really good tool to use as well. And again, copies of all the handouts, and including these options, on bcps.org under the Boundary Studies tab. So I just want you to remember that these are baseline options, and you'll see that these options are theme-based, and they're kind of geared towards one of the primary or secondary considerations to kind of show you, hey, what does it look like if I develop an option that's more geared towards one consideration and how it may deviate from some of the other considerations and what those impacts may be. These are all draft. Nothing is written in stone. You have the ability to completely discard these options, build upon them, alter them, and they are subject to change, or you could start fresh from the base current zones and start building your own options. As you look through these option maps tonight, I also want you to take a really good look at the planning blocks. If you see a planning block that you feel like should be split, maybe it's too large and you say, hey, this road connects to this one, I want to cut it down a little bit more. That's something good you can outline. You can mark up these maps, because we will take pictures of these and go and make alterations from them following this meeting. Or if you see a planning block that's next to another one and you know that maybe these neighborhoods kind of operate as one, say, yeah, I think these two planning blocks should be merged, or say, hey, these planning blocks need to always move together when it comes to school zoning, because they operate as a similar community. But definitely take a good look at these options, and as well as looking at the planning blocks tonight as you review these things. When analyzing them, looking at the geography, looking at the major roads, and study where certain areas move and how that impacts the tables. I'm going to go through these tables for these options to kind of give you an idea of how these options have shifted some of the enrollment numbers as well. And then also, when you look at these new options tonight, see how they relate to the considerations. Do they move you closer to the considerations, or do they move you further away? And then ultimately look at how they relate to how you guys have obviously voted on your sentiment when it comes to the primary, secondary considerations. So you'll see in your option tables, we have a stat handout. You also have copies of the PowerPoint that you can look at as well. You'll have the estimated enrollment, and the estimated enrollment just takes the total K through 5 living attending enrollment at each facility based on the boundary in each option. And it includes all of the preschool, pre-K expansion seats that are preserved at each facility as well, and rolls those up to a total number. I like this table, but my favorite table to look at is this one, the over-under capacity and the utilization. Lets you know how full a school is in each option. So when you're looking at these tables, you can see what the current post-utilization movement would be. This is if all the current boundaries stay as they are and do not move. And then you'll see in draft option 1, what those utilizations look like based on the shifts that you see as they relate to the map. And then you also have option 2 there that shows the over and under capacity at each facility and what the resulting utilization is as well. If you have any questions as you break into your small group work, feel free to ask me, anybody with an orange lantern, Paul, Matt, Chris, and we'll definitely elaborate any of that information to you. There are also some demographic tables that are broken down that are in your stat handout and also the PowerPoint. And you can also look at the shifts on what the current demographic percentage is, and then how those shifts based on these option moves with these in each option, draft option 1 and draft option 2. There's also impact tables. Now, the impact tables just show you the total amount of students that may be impacted in each option. There's this green and pink, or for my eye color, it's beige. And the green lines just show you that there's no students impacted. But when you see a pink line, you'll see the left column shows you what the current boundary is, and then the middle column shows you what that boundary changes to, and then the third column shows you exactly how many students change. So for this example, in the draft option 1, there are 173 students that move from Lyons Mills Elementary School into Deer Park Elementary School. And then there's the total table that tallies up all of the pink rows to get you that total of 509 in option 1 that are impacted. There are also feeder pattern tables that show you the progression of students from elementary school to middle school. It shows you what the current elementary school boundary is, middle school, and then the percentage of elementary school attendance. You'll see that there are a few current splits that exist in this boundary study area, and then you'll see how that changes in each option. A split is when an elementary school feeds into 2. So you see in the current configuration, Lyons Mill feeds into Deer Park, Middle Magnet, and Northwest Academy. and that counts as one split. In total, there are 4 current splits in the current configuration. In draft option 1, that goes up to 6. In draft option 2, it goes up to 5. We also tally up the amount of walk zone students, as that is one of the considerations to try to preserve pedestrian patterns. And you'll see the total number of current walk zone students and how that number changes in draft option 1 versus draft option 2. So just an overview of draft option 1. Again, I said these ones were developed as themed to kind of show you what it looks like if you develop an option and it leans heavy into one consideration while deviating further from others. And draft option 1 was developed with the primary focus of maintaining or increasing the diversity among the schools to reflect the diversity of the region and the school system. While most of the schools in this area are very, very similar in diversity, there was one school that kind of deviated a little bit from the study area average, which was Woodhome Elementary. So you'll see here that the resulting of option 1 based on these moves brings Woodhome Elementary and all the schools within 10% of the study area average in all demographic categories. As well, on top of that, it gives a lot of relief to Lyons Mills, Newtown, and Woodhome. But also with option 1, there are still 5 elementary schools that remain over capacity, which is greater than 100% utilized. And option 1 also impacts the least number of students of the 2 options at 509 K-5 students impacted. And it results in about 6 elementary to middle school splits, which is the most of the 2 options. So when you're looking at your maps and your plot maps, you'll see a dark black outline. That just shows you where the current elementary school boundary is. So if you see a color like looking at here is Hernwood, and the color bleeds over that black outline, that shows you that Hernwood is extending its boundary past that area in this option, and it just shows you that that boundary is changing in that area. In option 2, it was developed with the focus on the secondary consideration of being mindful of the impact on transportation and pedestrian pattern students. And you'll notice in option 2 that the walk zone counts actually increase and go higher than what they are currently, trying to preserve and keep the zones as condensed as possible. Being mindful of transportation, and some relief is provided to some of the more overcrowded schools like Lyons Mills, Newtown, and Woodhome, but there still are 3 elementary schools that remain over 100% utilized. It does impact the greatest number of students of the 2 options at 539 K-5 students, and it does result in 5 elementary school to middle school feeder splits, but that is the least of the 2 options. So at this time, I want you to break into your small groups, collaborate, talk, look over these maps. Remember, take a really good look at the planning blocks. You can also look at the current maps as well. They're labeled with the planning blocks. Feel free to ask myself any questions, James Cooper, Matt Cropper, BCPS staff. We're here to help. I'll give you guys about 30 minutes here, and then we'll reconvene to have you guys come up and speak about any of the findings that you have. Please feel free to mark up these maps. You can put sticky notes on them. You can draw on them. But remember, effective collaboration, allowing everybody to voice their opinion and give their thoughts on these things. we'll see if we can wrap up discussions here in like 5 minutes, so that you can kind of share your discussions with your group with the greater committee. So about 5 more minutes. Yeah, I get. Yeah. Tell me. Hold on, one second. Sorry. Alrighty, if we can reconvene at your tables. Oh yeah. Yeah, we can reconvene at your tables, committee. We can go through a quick discussion before we can get you guys home. Ugh. I heard some really good discussions, and I'm going to start with the orange group, as you guys are all here. If I could have a member or two come up and just speak for a minute or two about your findings. If you had any suggestions on maybe a planning block change, if you liked a particular option, or just even your broad discussions that you guys had, just kind of share it with the broader committee. On some of your thoughts that you kind of had. Yeah, it could be fast. You don't have to pick one. You could just discussions. Yes.
Things that struck you or that you liked that you didn't like.
Can I have everybody's attention, please? We're only scheduled to be here for 15 more minutes, and what we'd like to do next is to share with everybody else what your group talked about. So if we have everybody's attention, and we'll start with this table here.
You good, I got you.
Good evening. We just were talking about a couple of things. We didn't really pick a map, I'm not really sure, but I know we just had a discussion on basically how we are from 4 different schools and how the impact of, say, a small group, if you look at your draft option 2, how we have our teacher that has grown and had this section, and it may seem small, but it's 70 children in that part right here. So being that it got like transferred to, what's this, Woodhome, it was like, you know, it made a difference to her school, and she noticed that it was good for transportation wise as well. And yeah, not really much, but just little details like that of moving things around in this boundary study, that it was beneficial, and the teachers and everybody around, even a parent like me, can even do carpool, and it was just a lot easier. So those are the type of discussions that we had.
Thank you. And again, we know it's a lot of data, it's a lot of stuff thrown at you first night. So if you don't have anything high level, I get it. But definitely want to share your discussions with the broader committee.
I thought I would go next because we also had a discussion about that same little section of map that you mentioned. Of course, I'm the principal at Woodhome, so I know that section of town very well. That's an apartment complex that houses many of our Hispanic families who are deeply connected to one another. I don't like splitting an apartment complex. I don't think that that would be well received. So I think that's an important note on option 1. But we also discussed like the impact on the racial demographics, and middle schools really did become a bigger part of our discussion than maybe that chart up there would have led you to believe, and just kind of wanting for as many kids as possible to matriculate with their elementary friends up to middle school. So that's just a summary.
So we had a robust conversation, I will say. First, you know, just really understanding what we're seeing on the map, which is critical. So we had that discussion, but we also talked about the service delivery models as far as school that kids are getting, and as these boundaries move, are there support services that are going with these children, particularly those who are on IEPs or have some special needs. And so that was really the main crux of our discussion because we wanted to ensure that as these kids, particularly Campfield, as those kids are being moved into these schools, will they be able to get the sport? I think the other thing that was mentioned and talked about is understanding. It sounds like you have to know the community in order to understand whether diversity is being achieved, how this is moving, and it would be helpful to have that breakdown for us. Because for those of us who do not, I live in Winan area, and my area does not change, right? But there are areas, Newtown, we see Church Lane Elementary School will change. We need to understand the demographics that are happening. So those apartment buildings that may house a certain population would be helpful for us to make sure that we can use those considerations as guideposts. Did I miss anything? All right, that's our team.
Good.
Red.
Good. Good cues.
Very
Good
much.
cues.
So I guess like the last couple of tables, we pretty much had that same kind of conversation. We were trying to work on an option 3, but we're happy with option 2. Our concerns were around busing versus not busing and overcrowded busings. And again, like some of the other ones said about you're splitting kids up that live in the same communities if you send everybody off in different directions. So that was kind of like our focus in our conversation. Was that okay?
Good.
So we talked about really providing relief to schools. And so the option that we really looked at was option 2 because it provided the most amount of relief to schools, even though it impacted the greater number of students. We just try to say 5 to 3 schools. Those are hundreds of kids, and schools are not really equipped right now to handle these big number of students. So we looked at that. There was a walk zone discrepancy also conversation that was happening, but it was helpful to have so many different communities talking. I think for me as a principal, especially my school, I look at the least impactful. So everybody has their own kind of thing. Like I said, I'm happy to get more kids. I don't want to lose any kids. But I know just because I said that, it creates a trickle-down effect to Newtown and Woodhome and Hernwood. So we really just try to see, like, where does the most relief happen, even if it increases the numbers a little bit somewhere else. So that was option 2 for us.
Good. It was a great perspective, guys. I know it was a lot of information tonight. I appreciate the work that you put in, and I think it's just going to grow. We're going to take some pictures, and we're going to take a lot of the information that you brought in tonight. I hear there was a potential option 3 that might be drafted, so we'll see what you guys might have come up with, and if we can somehow draft that up for you, we'll bring that forth at your next meeting. So I'm looking forward. Our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, September 25th. Same location, 6 to 8 p.m. So I look forward to seeing you guys. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Enjoy your evening, get home safely, and I'll see you in a few weeks.